Here in the front, if you want to sit down. I know we have a lot of folks who want to hear about this. So there are some chairs here in the front too. Come on in, don't be shy. And hopefully there's enough coffee. I did make a little extra this morning. Thought we might get a big crowd. And I expect that there's cookies left over because you're going to be fasting today, right? Well, I just want to introduce us and open us up. Glad that you can all be here. We're eager to hear about Pastor Eric's experience. And next week we're going to be back here again. We're going to continue with our series on the Clash of Kingdoms with Ray Vanderlaan. So just a heads up, next week, back here again. But let me open with a word of prayer, and then we'll turn it over to Pastor E. Father, we're thankful that we can come together in this informal way, too, to learn and to learn about what you are doing in the world through the experiences that Pastor Eric's going to relate to us today. And Lord, we thank you for this group of people and the fellowship that we can also enjoy. And we pray for your blessing on Eric, and just give him good recall and give us a good time of learning. For your name's sake, amen.
Okay, first we're going to take an offering. So we're going to pass the basket again. No, I'm just so thankful for the opportunity to come in and share. I just want to first begin by saying just a big thanks to the congregation and to the council for their support and their love and their prayers for allowing me to take the sabbatical that I did over a 3-month period. There are many parts of the sabbatical that we took, including my family and everything else. There was a lot of different moving parts. But I would probably say that the border trip and one other part of my sabbatical was probably the most life-changing and most filling for me personally as an individual, but as a pastor too, coming back and ministering to our students. So just a big thanks to each and every one of you. I do want to set one ground rule as we get this going, because I am going to allow you to ask questions, which is daunting considering how big this group is. That means anything could happen. I don't want this to become a political discussion. I don't want to talk about what the presidents do or what the government does or anything like that. I just want to share with you my heart and what I experienced personally, and that's all I can share with you. So I want to be very clear about that. If you want to talk politics afterwards, see Dale Lynema. He'll take you to breakfast, and he'll take care of your political questions. But I really do just want to share my heart and what I experienced there. I know that there are many other people here that have been to the border and have been around the world, and you've seen a lot of it too. So I'm just sharing what I experienced, what I saw, and how it kind of changed my life. So the border perspective for me was part of the sabbatical, myself and Jake Toriga. He is an advocate for IFR. He's one of the directors with IFR, works for refugees. He's also one of my best friends. We graduated seminary together. We decided to take this journey as part of the educational piece of my sabbatical. And we didn't really know what we were getting into. We made sure that we made all of our golf appointments and all that stuff along the way, where we were going to be playing golf, but we didn't realize that this would be as life-changing for the two of us as it was. So what we did is we flew out of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and we flew all the way into San Diego. We spent 6 hours in the line to get a rental car, because that's about what it took. We finally got a rental car, and we started our journey there. We started on the farthest part of the coast in San Diego, all the way making the 1,900 miles. So it actually turned out to be 2,700 miles from there to Brownsville, Texas. So I'm going to share a little bit of that journey. I've got like 45 minutes to do this, so I'm going to talk fast. I'll try to get through the slides, and then I'll allow you guys to ask some questions. A couple of the pictures and stuff, they're really difficult to take pictures. If I haven't learned one thing from Bev Adma since I have traveled all over the world with her, it's very difficult to take pictures of people when they're in the place that they are that seems so bad to us. So a lot of the selfies, which I learned how to take selfies this trip. The kids are probably pretty proud of me. But we had to take that because it just didn't feel right to turn around and actually point the camera at a place or an individual to take their photo without their permission, and I feel like it takes their dignity away when you do that. I'm not there to gawk at them or to feel like I'm above them or anything else. So that's why there's a lot of selfies, not because I learned how to do it. But it is to keep the respect of the people. Not only that, there's a lot of security that I didn't realize that's along the border. If you get caught taking a picture, which I'll talk about in just a minute, you actually can get detained. You can actually get arrested. So some of these photos, I'll just plead the fifth. We'll just leave it there. So a couple things about the wall that I wanted to mention. Starting at the southern border, and we're just talking about the southern border along the southern border of the United States. The border itself is almost 2,000 miles long. It stretches from the Pacific Ocean into the west, the Gulf of Mexico in the east. On the U.S. side, approximately 8 million people live along the border. 700 miles of the border is land, and the other 1,300 miles, think about this, is the Rio Grande. Okay? So 700 of it is actual wall, fence, border, all that good stuff. That stuff that has been man-made built to create a border. 700 miles of that is actually a wall. Okay? The rest of it is the Rio Grande and mountains, actually. It's its own natural deterrent. About 2,000 Border Patrol agents work on the southern border alone down there. And there's about 300, and think about this, there's 330 points of entry into the United States from the southern border side into the United States. So each one of those actually has to be manned. Jake and I did our very best as we traveled along the coast was to actually stay as close as we could to the wall as we could, traveling the 1,900 miles. So there was a lot of times where we would have to get off the interstate and actually move in a direction south just to even get close to it. We tried to keep the border wall in our sight pretty much the whole 1,900 miles. That's why I say we traveled about 27, because there was a lot of zigzagging, and we actually ended up in some places that, yeah. Anyway, so leave it there. So you can see the border itself, where it starts. It starts in San Diego up there, and it actually ends all the way down here in San Padre Island area of Brownsville. Bill Clinton, back in the day, mandated the construction of a 14-mile barrier between San Diego and Tijuana. Everybody should be familiar with Tijuana. The Secure Fence Act of 2006 authorized the construction of 700 miles of actual border wall. Okay, so the importance of that is to show you exactly how long it is, but also let you know it hasn't been around that long, the actual border wall. We did have the Mexican-American War, where there was an actual line drawn in the sand, if you would. But back in those times, people could move across the line without any issues or anything. There was no border patrol back in the 1800s, 1900s, early 1900s. There was no traffic control coming in and out of the United States into Mexico. Okay, so it's actually relatively new. Most of it was completed by 2011. Okay, so just to give you an idea exactly how long this is and where everything is at. So we actually traveled this from point A to point B. This fiscal year of 2021, 1,600,000 border encounters happened just from Mexico in the southern border area with the Border Patrol in 2021. And of course, this is just reported. These are just the ones that actual encounters happened. So you can imagine how much higher that number actually is. Now there's a big misconception that I hear this all the time. Well, the Mexicans need to stay on their side. Well, out of that almost 2 million people that are coming across, only 400,000 of them are actually Mexicans. We got a chance to cross over the border about 4 times and actually visit the Mexican side. They're perfectly fine where they're at. They have no desire to come across. They have businesses, they work, they go to work like you and I do every day. So this misconception that the Mexicans are trying to come across is invalid. Having been there, having talked to a lot of people, the majority of the people that are coming across the border are asylum seekers who are also coming from Venezuela, Cuba, Brazil, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, India, and you can see the list goes on, all the way from Africa as well. We ran into an entire group in Nogales on the Mexican side. It was an entire camp of people from Ethiopia. So we're talking about a 6-month trip from Ethiopia, most of it by foot, and however they can cross the sea just to get to the border in Mexico. Once they get to the border, obviously they're held up there because they can't cross, so they build these camps there. They have nothing. They've sold everything that they own to be there, and they're actually not there just because they want to cross the border and take over our towns, but they're actually leaving areas that are violent for them in their own countries. So therefore, they are asylum seekers, not here just to take up space, not here just to take up our jobs, which today's generation won't do anyway. These are people that are actually trying to leave their homes. I want you to imagine that in the United States, that it becomes so violent where you live that you're willing to take up, sell everything you've got, and actually leave your home country to make a 6-month journey with maybe 6 or 7 family members to include little kids to get away from wherever you were at just to get to the border for a hope that you might be able to cross. Okay, so just kind of an idea that we have this idea that, you know, we talk about the 10%, we talk about the MS-16 and the MS-10 groups, and they make up a very small portion of the people coming across. And I think one thing that I learned while I was there is that the first job of a person who tries to cross the border as an asylum seeker is to seek Border Patrol. We have an idea that Border Patrol is out there looking for them and they're running all over the desert and they're capturing them. I'm here to tell you that that's not the case. The Border Patrol pull up on the side of the street and the families come and find them. Because they know as soon as they find Border Patrol, it is the very first step in them having a case to become asylum seekers to come into the United States. If they do not seek out Border Patrol first and they are captured, then they are considered undocumented and they're actually taken back, deported, and then you have to wait 10 years before you can come back in. So the population of people that are coming in that we think about like they're the ones coming in causing problems, causing murders and all this other stuff, it only makes up a very small percentage of the actual families who are fleeing their countries because of violence, trying to get into the United States so they can have a place, a safe place to raise their families, for them to go to school. And I talked to so many people on the Mexican side who said, I just want a job and I just want to provide for my family and I want my kids a safe place to go to school. There's not a person in here that doesn't want that either. These are just those basic human needs. And that really broke my heart when I heard that, because all you do is you hear on the news, you hear in social media about the 10%. That's all we hear about. But we don't hear about all the other people who are actually seeking asylum because they are leaving violent places in Venezuela, in Honduras, and in Brazil. We don't hear about that. These people are selling everything and moving to the border in hopes that they might be able to move into the United States. So here's the border wall this goes right into the Pacific Ocean. This is the furthest, the southernmost point that you can get into the border. It is just a wall. There were kids and people and families on the other side of this wall that were on the beach. I chose not to take photos of that. The kids actually came up to the fence and actually put their hands through and waved at us. But they're actually doing their own things. There's Border Patrol in the water, and there's Border Patrol all over that area. It is actually a park on the American side. You can actually go up there and have a barbecue and sit on the top. They've got this whole area that's nice and beautiful, and you can have a barbecue as you look over the other side. But this is the southernmost portion, or I would say the start of the border wall on the side of the Pacific. This is another section of the wall. It actually says restricted. This is where we messed up. So restricted means restricted, and I didn't realize that 5 feet would make a difference. Yeah, it actually does, and we found out the hard way. There's the winding from the Pacific for about the first 50 miles of wall. You can see how it is an actual wall. Some of it is fencing, some of it is wall, some of it is barbed wire fence and razor wire, but it is an actual distinctive wall. There's a no man's land in the middle that belongs to the United States. That's where Border Patrol runs its Border Patrol to protect and keep people in and out. So they do have people on our side, but they also have a no man's land where Border Patrol actually operates within the middle. So kind of a middle zone. And then they have these other fences that are up that people like me are supposed to stay out of. And, but this is kind of what it looks like for the southern portion as it gets started. This is what it looks like a lot of the 700 miles all the way down. So here's where we got in trouble. So we crossed that little line in restricted and we set off alarms that you could hear like for 50 miles away. Me and Jake were the only two on the beach, and we knew it was for us. Within a matter of 30 seconds, we had Border Patrol already above us, and we had tactical Border Patrol already on quads, already coming down to us. We had 4 of those guys come down, and we had about 4 or 5 trucks come to the surface at the top. And then, of course, you got these stupid alarms going off, so that was even worse. Super embarrassing, but when it says stop and don't cross the cones, Yeah, you're not supposed to go across the cones. But we tested it. We wanted to see if it worked, and it did. It actually worked. The only thing we didn't get was boat patrol coming up. So, but it's real. The border is real. It's there. It is being guarded. It is being protected, and it's there. One of our stops in San Diego is we got to meet Pastor Kamungo. Pastor Kamungo is from the Congo in Africa. And I'm going to share you his story, just a quick brief on that. Got a chance to talk to him and meet with his beautiful family of 9. Pastor Kamungo had a master's degree, had his doctorate degree, and was a professor in the Congo at the university there. They had some tribal wars that happened and everything, and one day when he was teaching, a group of the other side came in, they put him in a black bag, and they took him out into the jungle, and they put him on his knees, and they were getting ready to execute him. Because he was teaching the other tribes stuff that they shouldn't have been teaching in the university. We're not even talking about religion. We're not talking about faith stuff. We're just talking about the basics of school. And he was in the jungle for a couple hours, and all he said he just prayed to God that he would protect him. Some other things with this story, but anyway, Pastor Kamungo was released after a couple hours. He went right back to his home. He grabbed up his family, and he began the long walk from the Congo all the way to Malawi, going through Tanzania and everything else. This is by foot and trying to catch a ride wherever you could. It took him 6 months to make the total journey to get into the refugee camp in Malawi. Him and his family were in the refugee camp for 3 months, or for 3 years, excuse me. And then after 3 years, they got into what they call a lottery system, where his family got picked out to be sent into the United States, into San Diego as a refugee. When they arrived into San Diego, they had to go through the process. They had to get a caseworker, and they had to go through this long, arduous this process they had to go to. And we know because Austin's wife is going through it, even from Canada right now. 10 years. 10 years to get citizenship into the United States. And that was 10 years after he arrived in San Diego. Okay, for me, the system is broken. I'm not saying the system doesn't need to be there, but the system is broken. It shouldn't take that kind of time and that kind of energy. In this process, San Diego is probably one of the best states that they could probably be in. But I want you to think about this for a second. That is 10 years without a driver's license. That's 10 years now. He went from being a doctorate and a professor in a university to working at McDonald's. That is from a gentleman who held a high position in his community, who is now groveling, trying to get every handout that he can possibly get to make sure that his kids eat every single day. Okay, and we're not talking about we're in the Congo now, we're in the United States. Okay? So to hear his story and to hear him go from possibly death to a point where 10 years, 15 years later, he finally has citizenship for his kids and for his wife. And we got to celebrate. We were just there this is about 5 months after he got his passports. And just an amazing time to spend with him and his family, to hear his journey. And just to hear how long it actually took them, even to do it the right way. It took him almost 13 years to get citizenship here in the United States. This is a man with no record, a man of high intelligence and capabilities, and I can't imagine what it must be like to have to go in and mop up floors in McDonald's when you have a doctorate, and none of that carries over into the United States. But this is Pastor Kamungo. In the process of his 10 years being here, he didn't have a passport, so he couldn't fly, he couldn't go out of the state, he couldn't go out of the country. He's basically tethered to San Diego. He would lose all 3 of his brothers, and his mother and his father would pass away, and he would not be able to go back to Africa to be able to be there for those things as well. So to hear that is just absolutely heartbreaking for me. But we celebrated that he has his citizenship and that he's able to move on with his life. He is now a pastor in a very large church in San Diego, and he has a ministry within that to help other refugees and asylum seekers coming in from Africa. His church now helps them with that process to get into their caseworker and to take care of those things so they can speed that process up. But this is Pastor Kamungo. While we were also there, we met Pastor Dave. He runs a small, San Diego is amazing. San Diego also is one of the places for asylum seekers for Arabs. We went into an entire community where it was nothing but Ethiopians. We went into another community where Pastor Dave is. It's nothing but Afghans. And we have people from Afghanistan coming in and all the different Arab countries. And it's an entire community in itself. And they're going through the same process that everybody else is going through, that 10-year to 15-year wait to try to get citizenship in the United States as asylum seekers. Okay? These people just want jobs. They just want homes. They want to be productive members. They're not out there breaking the law. Most of them have families, and they're looking just to feed their families and to have a safe, secure place to raise their children. Pastor Dave has a community center there where he works with families and children who are coming back from Afghanistan and are coming back from the war and the violence within the Middle East. And it's an amazing story to hear. And he was an old hippie, was on drugs and alcohol, and lived out of his VW Bug van, for those that remember those days. And God got a hold of him, and it literally shaped his life. He sold his entire company at a multi-million-dollar company. He sold his company. He bought this little place here, and he started a ministry right in there that was working with Afghans. This is some of the place was just littered in artwork from the children that were coming over from Afghanistan and from the different places, and you can see kind of the heartbreak. You see the tank and everything else, and the stories that these children have is just incredible. And we got to hear some of the testimonies in that, and it'll literally bring you to tears when you hear a child talk about not being able to walk out of their house without somebody taking them and raping them and killing them, and watching their brothers and sisters taken out of their homes by the Taliban and by other organizations, where this is just a constant fear, and how secure they feel, even though they don't have everything, they don't have the citizenship, but just to be on U.S. soil for them is an amazing gift from God for them. And to hear these children tell these stories is just absolutely heartbreaking. And have served in the Middle East for many years myself, it really brought it home about how displaced and how bad the problem is in the Middle East. But just some of the artwork that's hanging over the walls there. We also met with Catherine, and we had a busy schedule. Obviously, this all happened in 2 weeks. But we met with the Church of the Brethren. She doesn't want her picture taken because she fears being arrested if she's caught on camera too. But Catherine runs basically out of her church. She runs a complete organization for Haitians. So in this little area, this dense population of San Diego, you've got an entire community of Afghans and Arabs. You can go 20 minutes down the street and you're in an entirely Ethiopian community, and you could go 20 minutes down to the south and you're an entire area of just nothing but a community of Haitians. The only good thing I can say about that is I ate a lot of different good foods. So everywhere we went, we either had swami or, it was just absolutely no beans. That was probably good for me and Jake. But even, there's a population of Indians, and it's just, I don't know, I have to say this, but I think when we get to heaven, dear people of God here in Byron Center, heaven's going to look more like San Diego than it's going to look like Byron Center. Just saying. They're just the multitude of people and flavors and smells and sounds and languages and everything else. I think heaven is just going to be just like that, so I can't wait. I can wait, but I'm like... The Church of the Brethren, though, so she basically takes in asylum seekers from Haiti, and she basically helps them and processes them. They helps them get caseworkers and starts to go through the legal process of becoming a legal citizen of the United States. Another underground person that'll probably never get her name written in a book or in a magazine, and she likes it that way anyway. She wouldn't even let us take her picture. So she's protected, not just herself, but the ministry. This is kind of the compound. They bring families in, and they give them housing, and they give them clothing, and they feed them, and they house them there, and they get them started in the process of becoming U.S. citizens. So the Haitians and these people that are coming from different countries, they know where these places are. They're very networked. They know where they're going to go as soon as they make that encounter with Border Patrol. They know exactly where they want to go. So they seek these people out. Catherine was an amazing lady. Her story and testimony was absolutely just heart-wrenching in itself. So then we got the Catholic Church. We were supposed to meet with this guy, Carlos, and we thought, okay, we're going to hear his story and everything else. What we didn't realize is that we pulled up to this hotel, and obvious I couldn't take the pictures I wanted to, but as we pulled into the hotel, we were supposed to meet him here. And we got there, and it was nothing but, there must have been at least 30 armed soldiers standing around the hotel with AR weapons and everything else. And so we kind of creeped by, and we're like, okay, this can't be the place that we were looking for. And we called Carlos, and he goes, no, you're in the right place. And okay, what do you want us to do? It's just go up and do what the guards tell you to do. So we did. They searched the car. They took our IDs. They black bagged us. No, I'm just kidding. They didn't. But they took our ID cards away and everything else. Then they rushed us off. They took us into a hotel lobby room where we stood for a few minutes. And then a few minutes later, under guard, they brought in the director from one of the Catholic churches into this. And what they do is the Catholic Church, again, we weren't allowed to take any photos. And you can imagine the security was there to protect the people that were inside that compound. And guess what? It's not from, they're not protecting them from the bad people, they're protecting them from the government. Just think about that for a second. They're protecting them from the people in San Diego, and they're protecting them from our government. And what they do is they rent out this entire hotel, and 350 asylum seekers a day are brought in by Border Patrol to this hotel, and that's where they are processed, given caseworkers. We hear on social media, well, how come the immigrants come in and they don't have vaccinations like we do and everything else? I'm here to tell you the first thing that they do with these people, we watch them process families coming through. The first thing they do is get a COVID test, and the second thing they do is get vaccinated. So everything you hear on social media and everything else, I'm telling you, is wrong. It's not what happens. I watched it happen. I stood right there. Okay? They take the families through a whole bunch of process. The very next thing they do is they have medical doctors and nurses in there. And those doctors and nurses go over every family member. And if they need treatment, they give them treatment. If they've got to go to the hospital, they're escorted to the hospital. If they can take care of any other vaccinations that they need at time, they're completely medically cleared to go on to the next phase. Then they are taken to several other stations within the hotel, very organized. They go through all their documentation and their paperwork and everything else. They find out what their situation is to find out if they have a sponsor in the United States. And then they start the process of getting them to be asylum seekers and recognized by the government as awaiting the process of becoming legal citizens of the United States. They're housed here for 15 days, so they're given a room. Most of the families that come in have not had a shower and haven't been off their feet for almost 3 months. So they come in, they get a shower, they get cleaned up, and they get fed 3 meals a day, and this is the Catholic Church that's doing this. So they literally buy out the entire hotel for it, and they don't advertise the address, they don't advertise who's in charge or anything else. And I thought, for me and Jake to be able to be privileged, to be able to walk in there and to actually see these families getting processed in the legal way, the right way, the way that the Constitution protects them and says that they're allowed to come into the United States, was absolutely amazing. And it just debunks all the stuff that you see in social media and in the news and everything else. And it kind of breaks my heart because our government and our leaders are using these kind of things as pawns for their election purposes. That's what broke my heart. These are people. You know, I'm sitting there watching like families with like 6 and 7 kids, and they have been on the road for 3 and 4 months and don't have a single thing. Now, how can you think about politics at that moment? And you have all these doctors and nurses and all these caseworkers who have devoted their lives to doing nothing but processing each and every family to give them their dignity and their respect and to treat them like human beings just for a few minutes so that they can become citizens of the United States. So when we hear all the time about, well, this is not happening right, they're just jumping the fence, it's not that way. I'm not saying that it's not happening at all, because we do have the 10%. But the 90% that are coming in are trying to do it the legal way so they could become productive citizens of the United States, so they can have freedom, so they can work, so they can provide for their families. I don't know how many dads I sat and just talked with and heard stories from, and the dad is just in tears for 30 minutes. Because he feels like he's failed. He feels like he hasn't been able to take care of his family. And this is the best that he could do with his family, was to get them out of Venezuela, to get them over the border, to turn themselves in, so that they could be taken care of. And this is just one Catholic church. This is one hotel out of all San Diego, and there's so many more. And to have the privilege to be able to go in there, to be able to actually witness it with my own 2 eyes, and to see the care and the love and they had chaplains on site, and their people were praying for them, and it was just absolutely amazing, the care that was going into taking care of people, not illegal people. I've actually grown, I hate that word. There's no such thing as an illegal person. You can't be an illegal person. If we truly believe that all people are created in the image of God, you cannot be illegal. You can be undocumented, but you cannot, there's no such thing as an illegal person. So even that term over these past weeks is like, that's my vocabulary has changed. To think for a second that you cannot be an illegal person. Even these people, these human beings, were created in the image of God. They are image bearers of our one and only God. And to see them treated in such a way, and given respect and dignity in those moments, just, how can you not have a heart for that? I mean, it just kind of breaks you down. And it throws away all the politics and everything else. So lots of wall. We tested lots of sirens, but we tested, it's like this, just about the 700 miles of actual walls like this. This is what you're seeing. So Mexico's on the other side, and then we're on the other. We started our trip down to Tucson, Arizona, about 6 hours. We drove down. We got all the way down, and we connected with so many people in Tucson. Tucson is also the home of, there's a small town in Tucson. We actually got to drive through there. The entire place is nothing but detention centers. It has a gas station, it has a convenience store, and it's nothing but detention centers. So I don't care what you've heard on social media, I don't care what you've heard in the news, but I'm telling you the detention centers are real. There is an entire detention center for kids who are separated from their families. There's an entire detention center for women, and there's an entire detention center for men. And that makes up that entire town, is just detention centers. We met Rosa and Lisa. Rosa came from Brazil. She came over to the United States on a work visa to work for a very wealthy man. She started working for this guy. He wouldn't pay her and was mistreating her, as you can imagine. I don't need to get into that, but was mistreating her. So Rosa, without anything else to do, she's from Brazil. She has no rights here other than she's on a work visa. She went over to Border Patrol. And she said, hey, here's my situation. Border Patrol said, well, he's not paying you, so you're not working. So they took away her visa and put her in the detention center. Rosa spent 5 years in that detention center. And we spent an hour and a half with her listening to the physical abuse, the mental abuse that she endured by guards and by other fellow detainees, all in this process of trying to figure out what her status was going to be or what they were going to do with her. So 5 years after this, Lisa, who's standing to the far left, Lisa actually reached out and became a sponsor for Rosa and actually got Rosa out of the detention center. Once Rosa got out of the detention center, she had the opportunity to go home, back to Brazil. She has 2 girls at home, and she has her husband. Rosa decided to stay in the United States and start a program and become the director of this program that helps these women and children to get out of these detention centers. And now she's been in the United States now for 10 years, and she's now the director. And a really cool story that she shared with us, that besides everything else that she shared and what she's been through, she said she, as the director, the new director, she went into one of the detention centers, the women's detention centers, and she went in, she sat down at the desk across from the warden at that prison, and during their conversation, they're talking about how they're going to work and get these women out of here and get status, and the warden said, well, let me give you a tour of the facility. And Rosa said, you don't remember me, do you? She says, I spent 5 years in here cleaning your desk. I cleaned your office. That was my job. And you don't even know who I am. So what an ironic karma thing for her now to be standing in front of her as the director of the very organization that's trying to release these women from this prison. And he didn't even know her name, didn't know her face. And I thought, as a human being, how does that feel for us? When somebody doesn't know your name, when somebody doesn't recognize you, when somebody doesn't know you, or even recognize that you're a human being. Jesus even said, it's like, you guys got it right. You don't know. You haven't seen me. You haven't searched me. You haven't seen the needy. You haven't seen the poor because you haven't seen me. What that must be like for the needy and the poor, for us to drive by them, not to even know their name or their face or who they are. And here's a lady that cleaned his office for 5 years. And she's back now standing in as an advocate for the women that are in the detention center that she served in for almost 5 years. Very powerful story for them. They work day and night with their own money and everything that they have to try to free these women from these detention centers. And most of the stuff that's going on with the detention centers is that it's all politics. It's all paper. You know, you're waiting for a sponsor, but you can't get a sponsor until you get out. Well, how do you get out if you can't get a sponsor? And there's all these catch-22 policies and stuff that our government has in place right now that's keeping these women and these children, who 80% of these children will never ever be reunited with their families, just to let you know that. The catch-22s were just going and going and going, where it makes it impossible for you to get out. And until you have a sponsor, or you have that piece, or you can get out and have a sponsor, or you've got family here, but these women are from other places, so they don't have family here. Then they stay there, and they endure all the hardships that go with being inside of a detention center. You're basically a political prisoner. That's how I look at it. I mean, you are. And she did nothing wrong. She was even on a visa, a work visa, and they took it away from her. Some of the letters that come in daily to this organization from inmate, or I can't use that word, from persons that are being held in detention, seeking these women to help advocate for them and to help get them sponsors so they can get out of there. Here's the St. Mark's Presbyteria. We met with another lady. Her name was Susan. She didn't want her picture taken either. But they're right there in Tucson. They take in asylum seekers that come in to Tucson. They come in Nogales. Nogales is one of the big famous walkover areas in Tucson to be able to get into Mexico. They get a lot of asylum seekers that come here, and they are connected with the education system, with all of the public schools, with the local churches, and they take all these kids in, and they basically minister to these kids. They have a youth group that's 350 kids big, and they're all asylum seekers, families from asylum seeker families. This church and Susan helps them find jobs, helps them get driver's license so they can get around, and they help them with their caseworkers to try to get them through the process and get that started for them so that they can get documented while they're here in the United States. But just another small little thing in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of Tucson. We'll never get credit, we'll never hear on the news who's doing work, taking care of people, just taking care of people. We actually got to go into Nogales. It was one of our crossings. We went into the city, super busy. If you've been to Guatemala or if you've been anywhere else overseas like that, it looks just like all of those places. No different. Very busy, lots of shops, lots of restaurants, really good ones. We had a lot of good tacos, and but just amazing people. Everybody was friendly and kind. They let Americans walk right in. Not a big deal, no issues, just beautiful people, just beautiful human beings. I just loved being there. Never felt unsafe the whole time I was there. This is from inside Mexico, looking from the other side. So you can see what they see from the Mexico side. This is what they're looking at every day as well as they go to work. Really hard shot. There was Border Patrol right at the bottom, so I kind of like had to take this over my shoulder. I'm getting good at that. But you can see their kind of houses are built up on the cliffs wherever they can get them, and that border wall just climbs right up over the mountaintops, right through and into the valleys itself as well. Again, just razor wire. Yeah, I mean, this is what they see every single day. As you can see, this is inside Nogales. You can see the American flag and our side of the wall. And you can see families who are talking to other family members. This was probably my most sketchy picture. I really felt bad taking this, but I just want you to see that they actually have windows inside there so they can talk to family members through the fencing, so that they can talk to family members who are on the American side. And families get here regularly, and they make meeting times, and this is how the families get together and meet. This is Pastor Abraham. Pastor Abraham was an immigrant himself. He has a long story. I can't go into all of it today. But Pastor Abraham now is a pastor inside Texas, and his job now every single day is he runs the asylum seekers shelters in the Mexican side. So every day, Pastor Abraham makes the foot walk about 3 or 4 miles from the United States side. He crosses through the border every single day, and he goes and works in the shelters there for asylum seekers on the Mexican side. And what he does is he basically provides shelter and food for those that are coming from Venezuela, from Ethiopia, from all over the world, for especially the southern areas. Pastor Abraham goes over and he helps them start their casework and everything else, so that those people are sitting on the Mexican side waiting to go through the process of having a case heard, so they can stand in front of a judge, so they can have their case reviewed, so that they can actually make a legal entry into the United States. This happens more than any other thing. And these people are just, I can't explain like how many groups of people are just along the Mexico border that are going through this. And Pastor Abraham's passion and his entire family is to take care of the needs of these people, to preach the gospel to them, to love them, and to help them get caseworkers so that they can start working on the process of coming into the United States the legal way. Got a chance to hang out with the kids. They loved their picture taken, so there was no questions asked there. That's what they wanted. But we got to go to one of the shelters that is in Nogales, and just a ton of kids. And I tell you, they're just like any other kid. We played basketball and everything else. I didn't even care about all the other stuff. I didn't want to talk about it. I just wanted to hang out with the kids. And we had a blast. And we played basketball, and we practiced our Spanish together, and they practiced their English. We spent 4 or 5 hours in there just hanging out with the kids. But this is what it looks like to walk through the Freedom Bird. I actually got in trouble for this. I thought they were going to take my phone. You're not allowed to take pictures in the Freedom Bridge, but this is actually what it looks like to walk into Mexico from the United States side. Here's inside one of the shelters. We got permission to take photos in there, and they were okay with that. But here's some of the shelter conditions, and just they're just bunks and racks. Again, if you've been to Guatemala or in any of those places in the southern area of the world, it kind of looks the same. But the shelter is able to hold up to 250 people, and at any given time they have 600 to 700 people living in one shelter. The classrooms, that is the one and only classroom for the kids. And here is the kitchen that they serve 700 people out of. And that just beats men's life with 40 guys on Wednesday morning. We moved from Tucson, and there's a whole bunch more stories I could tell you, people I've met and stories I heard while I was in the shelters. We just sit and talking to people from Brazil and Venezuela. Just amazing, heartbreaking stories of people been on the go and moving. We got to go to Eagle Pass next. That was the longest of our journeys. It took us about 16 hours to make that drive to get across, and we tried to stay as close as we could to the border wall with keeping it in view. We actually made a stop. If you ever guys get on that, is anybody who traveled the southern border? It is a long, long way. Texas is big. There's this place called Dateland. I don't know if you like dates or not, but there's this thing called the Date Shake. And they make milkshakes and everything out of it. It's like we had to stop there. So there's nothing for 600 miles, and we stop, and there's a date shake made place. And they just grow dates there. Worst thing ever. But you gotta go try it. Not to mention, we had to stop like 10 minutes later. So anybody that's having problems with that, go to Dateland. I didn't want to say anything, neither did Jake, but like I think we both knew. So we tried to find out where the best place to take a look at the border wall and stuff was in Eagle Pass, and guess what? It was at a golf course. So they said, seriously, if you want to check out the border and see the Rio Grande, go to this golf course. And we didn't understand what they were talking about until we got there. We're on the U.S. side here, and we're fixing to go onto the golf course. But as we go onto the golf course, we're on the U.S. side. That's golf course right there, because my ball's always in the rough. But that's the fence right there. That's the razor wire. Those are the towers. That's the Freedom Bridge on the other side. And we literally have a golf course that sits right underneath that on the Rio Grande. There's the Rio Grande. It makes up almost 1,200 miles of the southern border. You would think the Rio Grande, you think this great big monster river. It's really not. In some places, it's just a creek. There is razor wire everywhere. There are old Sealand van containers that mark it. There's border patrol everywhere. While we were down there on the golf course on the third hole, sure enough, underneath the Freedom Bridge, they were bringing a family out of the water and processing them right there with the National Guard and with the border patrol. One of the saddest things that could have ever happened is while we were down in the Eagle Pass, kind of heart-wrenching, and just kind of to show you the human piece of this is they ended up pulling a 6-year-old dead girl out of the Rio Grande as her family tried to cross. The part that really just broke my heart the most is that Border Patrol and the National Guard had to stand on the shore and they had to watch her drown. Because the Border Patrol and the National Guard are not allowed to enter the Rio Grande because it is the dividing line crossing them into Mexico. That is the cost of trying to come into the United States for freedom. That you're willing to sacrifice your kids for that. I met a man in Nogales who told me a story that he sold 2 of his daughters, 2 of his oldest daughters off to the sex slave, to the cartel, so that his other 5 kids could come into the United States. You think about that, dads. To make that kind of decision, where you're going to sell your 2 oldest daughters off to the sex slaves, to the cartel, so that your other parts of your family can get in. And I asked him, I said, how do you live every day? And he said, I just forget I had them. That's all I can do. Because if not, it would drive him crazy. That's the cost. That is the urgency for them to come over just to have freedom, to get away from the cartel. Mexico is run by the cartel. It is absolutely run by the cartel. The government has no control over there. The cartel does what it wants to do. We're allowed to go into Mexico and feel safe because the cartel tells everybody in there that they're not allowed to mess with the Americans, anybody that has a passport. Because the cartel does not want the U.S. government messing with them. The cartel runs Mexico, and they run the southern border, and they have something called the coyotes, who families will sell away their daughters so that these coyotes can get the rest of their families in and across into the United States. And how does that not break your heart? I can't even imagine selling my own 2 girls so that I get the rest of my family into a place for freedom. We take it for granted every single day that we're here and we have so much. And it just breaks my heart to think that I would give up my oldest so that I could get the rest of my family. That is not the 10%. That's not the people that are coming in causing trouble. That's not the drug cartel. Those are human beings trying to find a place for freedom. So you see the Rio Grande, these are students from one of the colleges across the way. We actually got to wave at them and talk to them. Very nice. They weren't chanting, get us across or anything like that. They're just regular people going about their day, enjoying a day in the park. There's the Freedom Bridge. That's what it looks like. Cars, vehicle, by foot to go across. They have these towers all over the 1,900 miles. The towers have infrared cameras. Movement protection. They have drones on the border, and there's Border Patrol as far as you can see from left to right. This is the end of the border here. It takes us all the way to Brownsville, and obviously there's a lot more stories I can share with you guys and things I heard. But this is where we come to a close. It goes all the way up into Brazos Island. It goes, you see the border. I don't even know who made this thing up. Somebody must have been drinking while they were doing it. While they were cutting the line out. I don't know. But super squirrely. Anyway, goes all the way up. This is our last point of entry, coming into San Padre Island, coming into the Gulf. And again, another selfie. You can see we're in a cotton field in the middle of nowhere, and the wall just ends. It just ends. There's no security cameras, there's no nothing. It just ends. I don't know why they don't walk that in and come around that way. I don't know, because we walked on both sides. Didn't set any alarms off. Matter of fact, the cameras and stuff that are up there are old and falling apart, and the lenses aren't there. And it's just like, we just got tired of building a wall, and we just got tired of worrying about it, and it just kind of ended. That's the last piece of the wall, right there. There is no physical wall the rest of the way to the coast. Probably about 125 miles. Just wide open. This is San Padre Island, our last day there. Jake and I spent some time fasting and praying, out of all things. Praying for these people, praying for our country, praying for our leadership, And this passage came to us here. It says, remember that when you, at that time, separated from Christ, alienated from the commonwealth of Israel, and strangers to the covenant of the promises, having no hope and without God in the world, but now in Christ Jesus, you who were once far off have been brought near by the blood of Jesus Christ. We were all once aliens. We were all once immigrants. We were all once undocumented people. But through the blood of Jesus Christ, he brought us into his kingdom. And it kind of leaves it just in my heart, like what? The biggest question that I had as I left the border experiences, like what does God want me to do with all this? Like what does he want me to do with it? What does this mean for me? Am I supposed to go sell everything I got? Am I supposed to move into a 2-bedroom apartment downtown and live amongst the people? Am I supposed to go give everything I got up and take my wife and my kids and move down to the border and become part of the solution down there? I mean, that's the hardest thing. And anybody that's been overseas, anybody that's done mission work, you know what I'm talking about. You have that feeling about what now? What are we doing? And the only thing that I could come up with was that God wants me to love and to take care of the people that he has me in the place right now. And that is why I love friendship so very much. That's why I love your students with all of my heart and with all that I got. Because I too was once an alien. I was once an immigrant, an undocumented person in the kingdom of God. And through the blood of Jesus Christ and what he did for me, I am now a child of God in his kingdom forever and ever for all of eternity. Amen? Amen. I don't know what God wants me to do with this. I'm educated, I'm changed. I feel ashamed about how I went into this experience, but feel free from coming out of it. I mean, before as a soldier, I'm one of those guys that's like, keep them out. Just keep them over there. They don't need to come in. They're just going to come in and cause problems. These are people. These are human beings. They're looking for freedom. They're looking for the exact same thing you guys look for every single day. A safe, secure place to live, to work, and to be part of community. I don't know what that looks like. I know we need the border wall. I'm not going to say that. We got to have our borders. We have to have our walls. We have to have those things. But the process is broke. And to be honest with you, I don't have an answer for it. I don't know if our government is ever going to either. But we can love people where we're at right now. And friendship, even with the stuff we're going through right now, if you can't love each other right now and be committed to where you're at right now, know where you go. Are you going to feel safe? Or are you going to feel committed or part of a community anywhere you go? Whether you disagree or agree with each other, it doesn't matter. If we don't stick together, who's going to pick up the church later? What are we showing the kids today? But if we can't do this and stay together and disagree and still work together and still love together and serve our God together, well, what's the point? Why don't we just all go home? Why don't we pack it up? Just let's go. Why are we doing this? What's the point? And what are we showing our kids? And I talk to our kids all the time about this. If they don't pick up the church, it's going to be gone in 10 years. It's going to be gone. We're going to move on and we're going to pass on and nobody's going to pick up the torch. So what are we teaching them today? What are we showing them today? I really do believe that God is telling me in my heart, I just need to love the people that God has placed. He didn't call me to Mexico. He didn't call me to Guatemala. He called me to Friendship Christian Reformed Church in Byron Center, Michigan. And he says, I've given you a ministry of students, and I've given you a ministry of people here at Friendship. And you're to love those people right where they're at, right in this moment, right now. And if we can all do that, and we can do that in the midst of this and stay together and stay united together today, right now, in the midst of everything that we've got going on, how much stronger the church will be and how much further the kingdom of God will be advanced. If we could just do that. So my challenge to you is, what's God calling you to? He's not calling you to Mexico either. He's not calling you to pick up or take it. And I'm not saying that it's not good to have things and we're not to have our freedoms and stuff like that. But what are we doing with it? What are we doing with it? Can we love the person at Meyer that's having a bad day, checking us out? Can we love and take care of the people that are at our work that we don't like the most? Can we care for and love the people that don't agree with us, disagree with us? Can we still have coffee with each other? Can we still love each other? Can we still give a holy kiss on Sunday morning? If we can't do that, let's all just go home and call it a day. Let's just give the government the money. I mean, seriously. I love this church with all my heart. I love your kids. I love the students. I love each of you. But we have to love each other and stick together. That's what family does. We keep preaching community and family and all these other things. We got to practice it. Your kids, our kids in youth ministry are watching you guys. They're watching us. And they know, they're not dumb. They see it. And they're questioning it. But I'm here to tell you, 10 years from now, if these kids do not pick up this church, it's going to go away. And it's going to be our fault. It's going to be on us. So what's God calling you guys today with that? I could share so many other stories, so many other things happened. This was transformational for me. I came back out of this, light on my feet and ready to go with the students. And I'm ready just to love them right where they're at. I didn't think, I had a question going to my sabbatical, 51 years old. How long can I do youth ministry? Because the holy jeans and everything else ain't cutting it, because they can see right through that. You can look cool, but I'm going to tell you what, they'll eat you alive. But they're watching us. Church, friends, family, they're watching us. What are we going to show them? We're going to show them unity. We're going to show them togetherness. We're going to show them love. We're going to fight and have division and disagree to the point that we can't sit across from the table and sharing the bread and sharing the wine together. I'll leave that in your hands. A lot of other stories. If you want to sit down and have coffee with me, I will, but you'll have to go through Dale Latimer first. But I know we're getting past that time. There's a lot of slides, a lot of information. Are there any questions? I'd be feel free to answer anything that you've got to ask. Yeah.
Like 7 years ago, we were in Guatemala at the pass of the Coyotes. Anything that reminded you of that, where it's just boats nonstop coming across, like on the Mexico-U.S. border versus Mexico-Guatemala?
Yeah, so I mean vehicles, that was the big thing, so trucks. There's a big movement of trucks back and forth. Is that what you're talking about? Like coyotes moving people?
Yeah, because we had to walk the bridge and passports, visas,
Yep.
everything. 10 feet away, nothing. Like people paying for boat rides all day long.
Yep, so the coyotes, they use semi-rigs, and I know you guys have seen it on the news where they would have like a fire or something and they killed a whole bunch of people. So here we are as American citizens trying to come back in, but you've got all these big semi-rigs that are full of people that are trying to move. These people pay these coyotes like an amazing amount of money. They literally sell their firstborns to be able to get in, but the coyotes are like a huge problem. Even in the Mexico side, watching people go from one side to the other. Going back into the United States was harder than it was coming into the United States, or coming into Mexico. We literally walked into Mexico and they didn't ask for a single thing. I'm not even sure their metal scanners were working, because I got titanium knees and I didn't set them off. So, but yeah, then you see these semi-rigs that are just coming into the U.S. and there's so much money involved with the cartel and with the coyotes and stuff, moving people back and forth. I mean, they're willing to, even in the semi-rigs, they build like false floors inside the semi-rigs and stuff people in there. They're in there for 20, 30 hours, waiting to get through the customs trucks with the trucks coming through, trying to get back into the United States.
And knowing that, these people know what the coyotes and the illegal cartels, they know what could happen.
For sure.
It could go sideways, like times whatever, and they're still willing to take that chance. It's got to be beyond our
Comprehension. Yeah, so the Border Patrol, we got a chance to talk to a lot of the Border Patrol agents, which was some really good conversation there too. I don't know if you know, but Border Patrol agents are actually trained tactical SWAT members. They're actually tactical soldiers, and their job is to take care of the cartel, the drug dealers, and everything else. And where the Border Patrol are finding themselves now is now they're having to deal with families and kids. And we talk about, oh, the Border Patrol are treating people badly, and they're not doing, they were never trained that way. They are trained as soldiers. They are there to protect the border that's there. And now we're laying the responsibility of taking care of families and showing empathy and everything else to children and everything. They have no idea what they're doing. And in fact, I'm going to be honest with you, I think they're overwhelmed. There is no training for them. There is no help for them. There is no like money for them. The amount of budget money that's been pulled from the United States to help support the Border Patrol is gone. I mean, they basically, and that's why the Border Patrol, when they get people coming in, they automatically cuff them and take them away in vans. That's what they're trained to do. I mean, that's what they do. So when you see the stuff on the news and everything else, just think that that Border Patrol person is a person. And he does this every day for 300 people a day. And his job and what he was trained to do was to be a tactical soldier. There is nothing, there are no resources at the border right now that take a family in to say, Mr. Stan, you're going to take this family in, you're going to counsel them and get them. There is none of this love or anything. We automatically treat everybody right away as a bad guy. And that is what the Border Patrol guys are trained to do. And then we get upset because they do it. Well, that's what you train them to do. So what do you expect? And then I heard heartbreaking stories from a lot of the Border Patrol agents. You know, they have a facility where they take 350 people and it only houses 60. So what do? They take all of their weapons and stuff out of their cages and everything so that they can make space. And guess what the kids like to do? What do kids like to do? Oh, let's go play in the cage. Oh, there just happened to be a reporter there to take a picture. I mean, the stories you hear about stuff like that is just incredible. And then it gets blown up in the news media, and then they turn around and make out the Border Patrol guys as bad guys. When really, they're not equipped and they're not trained to do what we're asking them to do today. I can't imagine having that job.
I don't know how many remember, but I don't know, it was like 10 years ago, we had a woman come and speak here to this group, and she was from like social services or something. And the one thing she talked about, she had us doing some exercises together, which made a lot of people uncomfortable. One thing she said, that an average time was from 10 to 15 years to become a citizen. And that was 10 years ago, or whatever, it was a long time
Yep.
ago.
And it still stands today, Jack. So 10 to 15 years. To start the process correctly, it takes 10 to 15 years to get your citizenship in the United States. That's broken. And a lot of taxpayer dollars. Somebody's funding all of that 10, 15 years. We are. So,
I
Austin.
just want to add on to that. I've got a buddy who works in Border Patrol stuff and in the processing side of things. And the computer program that they're using to process all these people was new in the 90s and has not been funded since.
It's the same system.
It's the exact same system that was started in '94.
I mean, because if you take a look at Austin's situation, I mean, Tonica there should be no question about why she can't come over. And still, here we are, 2-3 years now, and
It's the American side.
it's the American side. Yeah, so it's just absolutely incredible. Yeah, Joni?
You said, when you showed the Hampton Inn and the Catholic services that it's happening in those Hampton Inns, you said it's the Border Patrol, which is our government, right?
Yep.
Protecting these people from our government.
No, so the Catholic Church has its own private security.
Oh, okay.
Yep. The Border Patrol brings the people to the Catholic Church. They bring them to the hotels. So the people turn themselves into Border Patrol, and then Border Patrol knows where these facilities are, and then they drop them off in these facilities.
My question to you is, when that child was found, they couldn't do anything about that. Who was that? Who wouldn't do anything about it?
So the rules are, so they have rules of engagement on the southern border. Border Patrol and the National Guard are not allowed to cross into Mexico in any way, shape, or form. It's an automatic sign of aggression.
But this is a lie.
Doesn't matter.
I would also bet that's not the first time that that's happened, you know, like to us, we would want to jump in right away, it's the first time we experienced something like that, but this is our job.
Yeah, I mean, Border Patrol, they have drones out, and they've seen families literally die in the mountains on the Mexican side, and the drones are watching it, which means our American Border Patrol are watching that, and they can't go in and can't do anything. So, I mean, yeah, you're probably right. That happens more often than probably not, which is a shame.
So it's the difference between the families getting to the Hampton Inn versus any other entertainment center, whether they come to Border Patrol and say, hey, we're here, versus Border Patrol catching them.
Yeah. So, from my understanding is, if they're fleeing and Border Patrol catches them, they make their way to the detention centers. And Tucson is just one location where there's some in El Paso, There are other places along the southern border where there are detention centers set up. But if you're fleeing Border Patrol and they have to catch you, you're going to go to a detention center, or you get deported right away. Some people, they get deported right out. And then once you do, you go into the system, you've got 10 years before you can legally come back into the United States. So then those are the people that are constantly trying to come in and not get caught, or people who have, for some reason or another, are not allowed to come in legally. So, but yeah, but if you do come in, I didn't realize that either, that as asylum seekers, their first job or their first thing to do is to seek Border Patrol. We have this idea that Border Patrol is just running around grabbing people and sticking them in vans. That's not the way it is. In fact, Border Patrol, from the southern border all the way down, there are Border Patrol vehicles just parked along the road all the way. And they're there so that people that are crossing the Mexican border, the southern border, can find them first. Because they know as soon as they do, they're going to be taken to a place like the Hampton Inn, or they're going to be taken somewhere where they're where they get caseworkers. Once you get that is so vital that you get your sponsor and your caseworker. Once you get those two things, it starts the process. So these people are not coming across and trying to run. They're coming out. Plus, they know once they hit Border Patrol, they're going to get fed. They're going to get food. They're going to get water. They're going to get taken care of. They're going to have a place to stay. They're probably going to get clean clothes. All those different things, medical treatment. So yeah, I think that's the differentiation as far as I understand it.
I think that's so hard to trust it though. I mean, after you've been through the trauma that they've been through, then to say that they're really going to take care of them.
Yeah, and I don't, like, for me, that would be hard for me too. Like if I was crossing over, you know, who do you trust at that point? But these people have nowhere to go once they're in the United States, and you're undocumented, so you can't do anything. So you're kind of stuck. You can't get a driver's license, you can't get a job, you can't get a house, you can't get welfare, you can't do anything to provide for yourself. Now you become part of the 10%. Because now I'm, as a father, going to do whatever I have to do, even if that includes stealing, to make sure I feed my kids. So yeah, I agree with you.
How many of them get sent back to Mexico?
I don't know, Marv. I mean, I know that they go by the van loads. So, I mean, if they're undocumented and they're in the system as being a fleer or a runner or something, one of two things happen. They either go to a detention center or they get deported right away. From my understanding.
Who are on these buses that are getting dropped off in these various states?
Yeah, so these are asylum seekers. So the ones that you hear that are going to Chicago, again, just another picture of how these human beings are being used as political pawns. Whether you agree with the great governor of Texas or not, but these are people that are seeking asylum that are at these hotels. And, you know, I told you they only stay for 15 days. After 15 days, they get moved. So what these governors are doing is they're loading them up in buses and sending them to other states and letting the states have them. But these are asylum seekers. These are, if you would, under the law, under United States law, are legally in the United States under the laws of protection of asylum seekers. So those bus loads of people are going to these places, they're dropping them off, and they're basically saying, Chicago, deal with them. White House, deal with them. All these different places. But these are asylum seekers who have gone through the process so far the right way. So.
Is that good or bad?
As far as what, Lee? As far as like what is good or bad or what?
I guess when they disseminate, do those people have a chance when they get off the bus in another city? Is there going to be care for them, or are they going to be...
Yeah, that's the tragic part of the story, right, Lee? Because then they go to Chicago. Chicago doesn't want them. So they don't have a system in place to take care of them. So what happens to these people? Yeah, I agree with you. That's just, yeah, what's the point of that? But again, I think they're being used as political pawns. They're making a statement. The governor gets to make a statement to Chicago, and he's using these people to do it. So, same thing when they dropped them off on the White House lawn. I mean, it's the same thing. You know, White House, deal with them. These are people. These are human beings. I mean, that's the hard part. It's the hard part for me.
Sounds like you've got a lot more stories, really nice things.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll leave that up to Pastor Tim. I don't know if I can emotionally handle it. I'm getting weak. Reg?
Wouldn't it be a great place for everyone on the mission to plant a mission field, build a house, buy a hotel? Like, I'm surprised you only saw a Catholic and something else. I'm surprised there aren't 100 church groups with a home there to care for these
So there are, Reg. I just didn't get a chance to see. I mean, I only saw just a couple, but there are churches and organizations all along the southern border that are doing this. It is amazing how many people are actually dedicating their lives to caring for these people. It is not an unchecked thing. Yeah, but most of these churches and stuff, they don't want the government to know that they're there, because you know these are being supported by people like you, not by the government. The government has no hand in it. So they don't want to make themselves known. They don't want their picture taken. They want to stay anonymous to be able to do the work. So I'm sure there is a ton more out there, Mr. Edge. We just don't hear about them. So, yeah.
Are the sponsors, and how do you, can anyone become?
So anybody can be a sponsor. So you can actually, there's a website, you can actually go up and say that you want to be a sponsor. And sometimes it doesn't even include, like, that doesn't mean the family's going to move in with you. It just means you become responsible for them until they get on their feet. So you may be able to, the government actually or somebody might, like the Catholic Church, might actually give them like a house in Byron Center and give them a place to stay. You're just sponsoring them. In other words, you're saying that we'll take responsibility for the family, but you got another organization that's going to come along and take care of their financial needs and stuff like that, like Bethany Services or some of those other organizations that are here, even in Grand Rapids. Sometimes sponsorship also does mean that you take on the family, depending on the needs and what's going on with that. And I think online you can actually say, I'll be a sponsor, but don't want a house, or I can be a sponsor and help take care of this part of the financial piece. So you can actually go online and actually become a sponsor. So when these people come to these hotels in San Diego, so they start looking around for sponsors, which is what Jake, my buddy, that's what he does. IFR basically helps place these people with sponsors. And then they would send them here to Grand Rapids, pay for a plane ticket or for a bus ride, and would send them here to Grand Rapids, and then you would pick them up and then help get them around. But it's not always that you get to put them in your house. Sometimes they have a place to go through Bethany Services or something, but you are the sponsor that's going to help get them through their process and walk through all their different parts of it. And we do have a big organization here in Grand Rapids area that does that. What was that organization at Princeton, you remember? I can't remember the name of it, but there is an organization here where we have a lot of Haitians here. And they take a lot of Haitians here, and there's a lot of sponsorship here in Grand Rapids for Haitians. So, but yeah, you can sign up to be a sponsor here in Grand Rapids.
And if you're scared of all the government paperwork, let me tell you that is the easiest one of the applications to fill out.
Yeah. You can do it right online.
You can do it right online, super easy.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, sir.
I may have missed this, but how do these people that are seeking asylum know that the first thing they have to do is seek out the Border Patrol?
They know the rules better than we do, Miss Jane. They really do. That's filtered through people and everything else. We have social media today. They have families and people that are here that are talking to them by phone. So they know the process really well.
You know, Eric, you need to take your story more to the churches, because all we hear about is the 10%.
No, I say, Mr. Walt, the other churches need to go down to the border and bring it to their own churches.
But you do a good job.
Well, I appreciate that, but I wish more churches would, I wish they would go down. I wish they would find out for themselves and be a part of what's going on. And maybe our job here at Friendship CRC is to pray, to be in prayer, but to be educated, to understand. Don't listen to social media. It's not all that's true. We know that today with everything that's going on with social media. I mean, right? I mean, we don't have truths, whole lives. I mean, I can't keep up with it myself. But don't listen to everything that you see on social media and things like that, because some of that was just completely debunked as soon as I went down there. And everything that I thought to be about this process was just the opposite. And it was life-changing for me. I mean, it really was. I mean, I almost felt ashamed after I left there for the way I felt before. I think the biggest thing for me was just realize that in God's kingdom, I was an alien, I was undocumented, and I just take away that I'm so thankful through His grace that I am now a child of the kingdom. And He's let me in His gates, and He's allowed me to cross His borders, not by anything I've done, but what Jesus has done for me. So, one last thing is Miss Bev is gonna, and then I'll close in prayer, and I know we're way past our time, so.
Okay. Well, I just want to say thank you. I've been honored to be part of this journey of learning about the Lord together, and it's a privilege. But I want to say to you, I want to invite you to an opportunity to experience the border yourself. Not 2,700 miles, but for either a 4-day option or a 7-day option in El Paso, Texas, starting January 9th. Some of us went last year. I think some of you heard us talk about it. And there's another opportunity this year to go down to El Paso, cross the border, see things on either side. Just a small glimpse of the kind of things that Eric has talked about this morning. And one of the things that I wasn't prepared to talk about this morning, but I'm going to mention really quickly, I had a call on Friday morning with Haley Ritzma, who maybe some of you remember. And Haley is in Bosnia, and she is helping people who are seeking asylum in Europe to try to get across the border from Bosnia into Serbia. And I mean, she said from a country that I'm connected with that they've had between 30 and 40 people a day in the last few weeks. And some of them have flown into Serbia, and then with basically coyotes in Serbia taking lots of money from these people. So the whole system around the world is something we need to pray for. And people like Haley working there, and all of the people that you shared about at the border. There's so much more that we could say about this and the involvement of churches. I'd love to have that conversation with people sometime, because the Church of the Brethren is the one that was connected with the Catholic Church that took care of children in some of the respite centers that I've been part of, and some of you have been part of that training as well. So, you want to close in prayer, or shall I pray for you? Pastor Tim had to go and do lunch.
Yeah, you can, but that's fine.
So let's just pray. Dear God, there are times in our lives when the size of our hearts are just too deep for our words. And that's what I feel like this morning. But I just also, in the middle of all of that, want to just give you thanks. Give you thanks for Eric's testimony of how you worked in his life to share the stories of people who love you too, and just what are you calling us to do, each one of us. And I just thank you that part of his journey that you have called him to is just to share this with us this morning. And so I just pray that you would put in each one of our hearts what it is you want for us to take in and live and do because of this. And that you will bless Pastor Eric in the way he's blessed us. And that you will bless people like Haley wherever they are and in whatever they're doing. And most of all, Lord, I just pray for all these people around the world who flee their homes every day in just wanting to survive and have a future for their children. We know that you love each one of them and see them just the way you do us. And so we just ask for your presence in their lives too. For Jesus' sake, amen.